Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this video in which we look at factorizing quadratic trinomials. We've already seen how to factorize quadratic binomials when there are two terms, but today we're going to look at how to factorize when there are three terms in a quadratic expression. So let's just take a step back and look at expanding, which we did a couple of lessons ago. So let's have something like x plus a times by x plus b, right? So we're going to use FOIL. So firsts, outsides, insides, and then lasts. Okay, that's what you would get. So I can rewrite this expression, x squared. So I can collect these like terms as so. It'll just be a plus b multiplied by x, and then AB on the end. So why am I showing you this? Well, we want to start with something like this that has 1, 2, 3 terms, and we want to end up with something like this. So I just want you to note that the numbers that go here appear in our final answer when we expanded it. So the numbers, when they added together, that's the number you get in front of x. When they're multiplied together, that's how you get the constant term. That's what happens when you expand them. So if I had something like x plus 3 times x plus 4, I get x squared. So if you add them together, you get the number in front of x, and if you multiply them, you get the constant term. So how is that going to help us with factorizing? We start with this. We want to end up with something like that. So if I have an expression like this, I need to find the two numbers that add to give this number in front of x and multiply to give that number. If I find those two numbers, I can just stick them in the brackets. So I'll show you what I mean with this example, the next example here. Let's say I have x squared plus 5x plus 6. So I want to factorize it. So I know that when I factorize it, it's the opposite of expanding. I'm going to get x in each bracket, right? I just need to find what number goes here and what number goes here. So the two numbers I put in the brackets are two numbers that add to 5 and multiply to 6. So I want to find two numbers that when you add them, you get 5, and you multiply them, you get 6. Okay? So there will only be one possibility for the questions you're doing. So if you're not sure what the numbers are off the top of your head, look at the one where you're multiplying 6. So let's look at factors of 6. So I have 6 and 1. Well, they can't add to give 5. But other factors of 6 are 3 and 2. They do add to 5. That's the only possibility, 3 and 2. Doesn't matter which you put in the first bracket and which you put in the second. I'm going to write it like this. That's it. This is my answer. So I knew that the numbers were 2 and 3, because if you add 2 and 3, you get 5, this number here, and if you multiply 2 and 3, you get 6, okay? And all your answers are going to look something like this, so you can start off from that fact. All right, let's look at a few more examples. So let's say I have something like x squared plus 9x plus 20. So when I factorize it, I know I'm going to have two brackets, each with an x in it. So I now have to find two numbers that add to 9 and multiply to 20. So look at factors of 20. 20 and 1 definitely won't work. 10 and 2 sure as hell don't add to 9. 5 and 4, now we're talking, they definitely add to 9. It gets a bit harder when you have negatives. So let's say I have something like x squared minus 7x plus 6, okay? So the number in front of x is not 7, it is negative 7. So it's the same idea, two brackets with an x in. So I need to find two numbers that multiply to positive 6 but add to negative 7. So hopefully you can realize that if two numbers multiply to give a positive, they're either both positive as in the previous case, or both negative. Because this here is negative, both numbers are going to be negative. So let's look at negative factors of 6. So what about negative 6 and negative 1? Oh, I hit the jackpot first time. Negative 6 times negative 1 gives me positive 6. Negative 6 plus negative 1 gives me negative 7. They're both negative. If I have something like this, x squared minus, say, 11x plus 24, it's the same thing. Well, it's the same thing in that two brackets with an x in, and both the numbers I'm looking for must be negative. So let's go through, the reason they must be negative is because this is negative, and this is positive. So let's go through negative factors of 24. So 24 and 1 can't get close to 11. What about 12 and 2? Well, there's no way I can get to negative 11 using 12 and 2. But what about 8 and 3? If they're both negative, they will add to negative 11. So that's my answer. So in all these cases, if I expand this, I get what I start with. If I expand this using FOIL, I should get what I start with. So you can always check your answers if you like. So it might get a bit harder when you have the last term being negative. So what if I had something like this? Plus 3x minus 4. So when you have the last term, the constant term being negative, you have to have one number positive and one negative. That's the only way two things will multiply to a negative number. If one is positive, one's negative. And that's where it can be tricky, figuring out which one's positive and which one's negative. Okay, so let's go through factors of 4, or negative 4. So negative 2 and positive 2 won't help. They add to 0. Does not help at all. So let's look at 4 and 1. So these brackets will have an x in it. Let's try 4 and 1. So for 4 and 1 to multiply to negative 4, one of them has to be negative and one has to be positive. So let's try it out. If I put a negative 4 here and a positive 1, that won't work because negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. So it will actually be positive 4 and negative 1. So 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. 4 plus negative 1 is positive 3. Let's try another example. Let's try x squared minus 8x minus 20. So again, the last number being negative means when I do my brackets and put the x's in, one of the numbers will be positive, one of the numbers will be negative. So let's try the factors of 20. So you've got to look for ones that differ by 8. So 20 and 1 doesn't work. 10 and 2, yes, that would work because they differ by 8. So the 8 is negative. So that means that the larger factor, 10, will need to be negative. So it'll be negative 10 and positive 2. Okay, again, if I expand this, I should get that. It isn't easy because you can't just get your calculator to tell you the two numbers, so it does require some work. I know it's difficult. Please remember, I'm here to help. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.